Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste everybody. Gandhari had 100 sons, but she guessed that her children had a streak of wickedness in them. So she wanted a son who would be virtuous, and she wanted a daughter. When Durvasa visited them, Gandhari prayed to him to perform a yajna so that she got a virtuous son and a nice daughter. Durvasa obliged. As a result of this, as a result of the yajna that he performed, Durdasa was born, and Durdasa was born a virtuous child. And we know who Durdasa was. Durdasa was the one, you might recall, who gave protection to Yudhishthira in a chariot when Yudhishthira was unarmed in the Kaurava side. Durdasa had responded to Yudhishthira's call to join the Pandavas if somebody in the army of the Kauravas wanted to join for the cause of Dharma. So he was, we have talked about him, and we know who Durdasa was. So that was how he was born. By the blessings of Durvasa, through the performance of a yajna, this virtuous child was born. And there was a beautiful girl who was born, and her name was Dushila. Durdasa and Dushila. So that made Gandhari the mother of 101 children, 101 sons and a daughter. Now all the names of all her sons started with Du. So sometimes one might think that Du would suggest something negative, just as Su suggests something positive. Sugandha, fragrance. Durgandha, foul smell. So Du is connected with something foul, something wrong, something sinful. Su, something blissful. So that contrast one might have in mind, going by the morphology of, going by the semantics of words in Odia, starting with Sa, or starting with Su and Du. But that is not the point. But that is not the correct. But here when we. But when Gandhari's sons were called with names each starting with Du, it was actually her gratitude to says Durvasa, because of whose blessings all her children were born. So it is she named each one of them after the says Durvasa. So this naming practice continues even now. We name children, people name their children with the names of gods, with the names of sages, with the names of holy texts and things like that. So this practice even now continues. So that was the significance of Du, of all the 101 names that she had given to her children. It had nothing to do with anything negative. It had nothing to do with anything inauspicious. Do here was used because she wanted to show her gratitude to sage Durvasa. And the beautiful daughter was also called Dussila for the same reason. She was born because of the grace of sage Durvasa, and that was the mother's gratitude. That was the mother's way of showing gratitude to the sage, because of whose grace the child was born. Now, when the war ended, Gandhari had lost all her 100 sons. Gandhari had lost 100 sons. One son was alive, and I do not know whether she really knew about that son, because there was no reference to that son in Gandhari's words during or after the war. It is possible that when her son left the Kaurava camp and joined the Pandavas, for all practical purposes, Gandhari did not think of him in the way in which she thought of her other sons. It is possible, I don't know. Nothing is said about that in the text. In any case, so that was the only son alive. And look at that son. That son was born because Gandhari had pleaded with the sage to give him a virtuous son. So what happened was, when after the war, when Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, when Yudhishthira and his brothers went to Dhritarashtra and Gandhari for reconciliation, both Dhritarashtra and Gandhari were extremely angry. They pretended to receive them warmly, but there was the fire of revenge burning in them. Dhritarashtra wanted to destroy Bhima, and Gandhari wanted to destroy Yudhishthira. What Gandhari did was, she said that she wanted to, what Gandhari did was, she said she wanted to see Yudhishthira, and said, Yudhishthira, come and take off the strip under which she told Yudhishthira to come and take off the strip with which she had hidden her eyes. Now, Krsna figured out, Krsna looked at Sahadev, and Krsna figured out that Gandhari's intentions were not good. Krsna knew that once that cloth is taken out, once her eyes are uncovered, the cloth is taken out and the eyes are uncovered, the anger in the yogic fire would emerge from Gandhari's eyes, and that would burn whoever she sees in front of her to ashes. So he knew that. So he told Durdasa, go and uncover, go and take off the, go and take away the cloth from your mother's eyes. So that is what Durdasa did. And when Durdasa did that, she looked at her son. She did not know who Durdasa was. She had never seen her son. And she thought that the person who uncovered her eyes was Yudhishthira. So she looked at the person in anger, and from the yogic fire that came out of her eyes, she was a virtuous woman, so the yogic fire that came out of her eyes burnt Durdasa to ashes. So she asked, who was this? And Vidura said, you had one son alive, and look what you have done to him. Now tie up, now cover your eyes with the cloth again. And that is what Gandhari did. She was extremely devastated. She was completely devastated. All her children were all her sons were dead, and her daughter had become a widow. Her son-in-law was dead. So in that moment of great frustration, the mother cursed Krishna. Sometimes it happens that when you cannot, when there is no one, you can sort of. It's like cursing Krishna is like she cursed Krishna, and she said that Krishna, you could have stopped this war. Both the Pandavas and the Kauravas would have listened to you. You had it in your powers, but you did not do it. You deliberately allowed the war to take place, and you are solely responsible for the death of my children. I curse you. Just as the Pandavas and Kauravas, who were brothers, fought among themselves and destroyed themselves, all my children were destroyed. In the same way, your kin, the Yadavas, would fight among themselves and destroy themselves. This is what she cursed. In the Mahabharata, in Vyasa Mahabharata, there is an additional curse, and the additional curse was that you, Krishna, yourself, will be killed by a hunter. You will die a very ordinary death. So the Pandavas were very upset. When they heard the curse, the Pandavas were very upset. And what Krishna did was, talking about Sarala Mahabharata, what Krishna did was, he accepted the curse. As Sarala says, he was very happy, utfullita. He was full of joy and happiness. He was elated when Gandhari uttered this curse. Why was he elated? Because he told Gandhari that, look, you have done what I myself wanted to do. And Gandhari was embarrassed. And the Pandavas were very, very upset, knowing that 36 years from that day, the Yadavas would be destroyed, and Krishna himself would die. So that was the mother's curse. Now, interestingly, here it is the human who cursed the avatar. The avatar accepted the curse. The avatar did not curse the human, as he had in Vyasa Mahabharata, where he had cursed Ashwasthama. In Sarala Mahabharata, the avatar did not curse anyone, but was cursed, and he had accepted that curse. So that was what happened. So we know what happened to Krishna and what happened to his Vansha. The Yadavas killed themselves. Only Balaram and Krishna were left alive. And Balaram meditated, and then out of Balaram's body emerged a huge serpent with 1,000 heads, and it swiftly entered the sea. And the sea gods worshipped him as he entered the sea. We know what happened to Krishna. The Savarajara wounded him by shooting. The Savarajara shot an arrow and wounded him. And we know that that was the immediate cause of his death. Now, it is interesting to note, and when Jara was so upset, Jara was inconsolable. He said, the one who is worshipped by Brahma, Shiva, all the gods, I have harmed him, I have wounded him. What sins have I committed? He was inconsolable. Then Krishna said, that do not worry. You have done what I wanted to happen to me. Now there is, there is a link to this. There is a link. It is connected with the Ramayana again. In the Ramayana, Lord Rama, the avatar, was pleased with Angada and asked Angada to ask him for a boon. Angada did not say anything. And Ram, who knew what was going on in Angada's mind, told him that, look, I know that you were unhappy that I had killed your father, and as a son, you thought it was your duty to avenge your father's death. But you, of course, could not do that. When Hanuman heard this, that it was in Angada's mind to avenge his father's death, Hanuman was extremely angry. He wanted to he wanted to kill Angada. Ram pacified him, and Ram told Angada, I understand this. What will happen is, in the next birth, in my next avatar, in my avatar as Krishna, in Dwapara Yuga, you will be born as Jara and you will kill me. So that is the word that he gave. What is interesting here is this, that when God takes the form, when God descends, when Narayana descends to the world and takes avatara, he does not do this because of any karma. The question is, this cycle of this karmic cycle, does it apply to him? That is the question. He was born and he was killed, he died. Now, is Krishna subject to the karmic cycle? The answer is no. God performs, Krishna, avatars perform action, do things, but karma phala, the fruit of karma, does not accrue to him. Avatars come not as a result of the avatars come not because they are part of the karmic cycle, but for other reasons. In Srimad Bhagavata, an idea that Saralai incorporated into his Mahabharata, Narayana, the source of Krishna, he tells him that, look, when the Devas came and pleaded with me to redeem the world of its burden, what I did was I took away, or I extracted two hairs from my body, a white hair and a dark hair. The white hair is Balaram and the dark hair is you. So, Narayana takes form, or Narayana descends onto the world and takes the form of avatars for various reasons, and those reasons have nothing to do with the karmic cycle. He is not part of the karmic cycle. We have been talking about moksha. So Narayana, there is no question of Narayana getting moksha, because purusarthas do not apply to Narayana. He is not, he performs things, he does things, but he is the one to whom the fruits of action, fruits of karma do not affect. He is unaffected by the fruits of karma. everyone else is. And that's an important idea. So if Krsna was killed, it was not because of his karma. Krsna was killed because he had given word. Now, there are this karma and this idea of karma and karma phala is a very dominant idea in Sala Mahabharata, as it is in the tradition. In Srimad Bhagavata, there is this story of Ajamila, the Brahmin who had committed grave sins, but at the time of death, he could see shadowy figures, and he was scared, and he called his son, whose name was Narayana. He called out his son's name, Narayana, 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 because he was afraid of what he was seeing in shadowy form. But because he had taken the name of Narayana, he didn't mean to invoke Narayana, but he just took the name which was his son's name. So because he did that, he did not have to go to Yamaloka, he went to Vaikuntha. So that is the popular version of the story. Namely, you don't have to do anything. You might be the worst sinner on earth, but if you take at the moment of death the name of God, then all your sins are wiped out and you go to Vaikuntha. This is the popular version. Probably it is the bhakti, in the bhakti times, this version became very popular. This version sort of emerged. But Srimad Bhagavata doesn't really say that. What happened was, he got a second chance. He did not have to die. He was restored to life in some sense, and he lived. And this time he lived a pure life, a virtuous life, and at the end he went to Vaikuntha. So this is, in other words, he had to perform good karma for that. Merely taking the name by accident doesn't redeem anybody. All that happened was that gave him a second opportunity. And how could he utter the name of Narayana at that time? That was also because of some good karma that he might have done in the past. Although he was a sinner, although he had committed many sins in this life, maybe in his earlier life, earlier existence, he might have done some good, he might have done some punya, because of which he accidentally took the name of Narayana. He took the name of Narayana and although he did not intend although he was only calling his son. Similarly, there is this prostitute, the fallen woman, in Srimad Bhagavata again. Her name is Pingala. The same thing happened to Pingala, a woman who used to sell herself for money and for pleasures of and for a good life in the world. One day it so happened that she turned over a new leaf. There was a very rich, there was a rich man's son. There was a very rich person, a young rich person, whom she was waiting for that night. And she waited and waited and waited. He did not come. So suddenly vairagya arose in her mind, knowledge arose in her mind that she had wasted her life by doing things which are temporary and which really did not give joy. So what she did was, the following morning she went to the forest and to perform tapas. Now the idea is, this is roughly the story. It's not exactly the story, but the idea is roughly like this. So there was the important point is, there was a transformation in her at a particular point of time. She was extremely frustrated. She almost gave up. And then suddenly this transformation, this idea came to her mind that she had wasted her life following things which actually did not give any permanent joy. So, this transformation is an important thing. Now, why did this transformation happen? This transformation happened because she had done some karma in the past, and what happened was the fruit of her karma that she had committed, that she had performed in the past. So, when these moments, when spiritual transformation takes place, when these things happen, they don't happen by accident really. They look as though they happen by accident, but the reality is that in the past they did something, some karma, and what happened was the result of that karma. And like Ajamila, she also got a second chance. So she went to the forest, lived a virtuous life, performed tapas, and attained Vaikuntha. So this idea of God's grace, that is the idea of God's grace is that the God does not nullify the effect of karma. Because of some good karma, that particular defining moment comes in life which changes one. And maybe grace is some kind of a facilitator for that. You get a new chance, and this getting a new chance is probably because of grace. If the dissatisfaction with the kind of life one was leading, or a defining moment when one is transformed, one feels the urge, one feels the desire to live a different kind of life. So that defining moment, that is the result of one's past karma, and probably grace comes in the form of getting a second opportunity, getting a second chance to live. The same thing happened in the case of the same idea is implemented, is executed in the story of Draupadi. See, Draupadi, let us go to the disrobing incident of Draupadi. We know that Dushasana dragged Draupadi to the Kaurava court, and in full view of everyone there, he tried to disrobe her. Now, but we know that she could not be disrobed. What happened was, layers and layers and layers of clothes were found on her body. So when Dushasana tried to disrobe her, then it looked like clothes were emerging from her body, and she could not be disrobed. So that story we know. Now, what happened? In one version, in Vyasa's version, it is not really Krsna who dressed her, who gave those clothes to her. It is not really Krsna. In Vyasa Mahabharata, it is Dharma, and and it was Dharma who gave her the clothes. Krsna came when she invoked Krsna, when she took the name of Krsna and invoked Krsna. Krsna came running. Krsna came, but he did not directly give her the clothes. Maybe when it is said that it was Dharma who gave her the clothes, and it was Dharma who kept on, because of whom she could not be disrobed. Maybe and Dharma did it unseen. Now, who was this Dharma? Was it Draupadi's good deeds? That could be an explanation, that it was Draupadi's own good deeds, that she was a virtuous woman. So it is her Dharma which protected her. That is one explanation. But then Krishna was also there. So Krishna came running in some form. He probably was there. So maybe maybe what is called dharma was Krishna himself. But in popular, but the popular story is that it is Krishna who gave the clothes. But there, it is dharma. Whether we want to identify dharma with Krishna in Vyasa Mahabharata or not is a question, is an interesting question. We probably can, we probably need not. But in the popular version, they are fused. In the popular version, it was dharma and the dharma that gave her the clothes and Krishna, they become the same thing. So it was Krishna who gave the clothes. So that is bhakti. So if dharma gave her the clothes, it simply means that it is your own good deeds that help you. This is karma, your own karma that helps you. Now look at what happens in Sarla Mahabharata. What happens in Sarla Mahabharata is, when she comes to the Kaurava court, she simply says, she does not really keep on, she does not go and ask, she simply goes to her husbands and asks them to save her. But they say, from the, but she figures out that they were not in a position to help. She did not go and argue with Bhishma and Drona, and she did not ask them questions about, like you have in Vyasa Mahabharata. No questions about whether it was right for Yudhishthira whether Yudhishthira had the right on her after Yudhishthira had lost. So these questions, which are well-known questions, she did not ask anybody those questions. And Duryodhana challenged her that, look, you say that Krishna is your friend. Why don't you ask Krishna to help you? Now, at that point of time, Draupadi tells a story to Duryodhana to say that he should not insult Krishna, he should not challenge Krishna. Because if you challenge Krishna, unpredictable things would happen. So she warned Duryodhana not to challenge Krishna. But Duryodhana kept on saying, let us see how your Krishna saves you. And then what happens? She prays to Krishna. When she invokes Krishna, Krishna was playing dice with his wife Rukmini, with Satyabhama. And Krishna said, okay, I am protecting you, I am coming. So Satyabhama said, what are you protecting? Who are you protecting? Then Krishna said that, look, Draupadi is in difficulty, is in danger, so she invoked me, she called me, so I am going there. So Satyabhama said, where is Draupadi and where are you? You are in Dwarka and they are in Hastinapura. So how do you know that she was calling you? I would like to go with you and just see whether what you are saying is right. So both of them came on Garuda and Draupadi saw them. And when Draupadi saw Krishna, she was completely, she prayed to him. Her immediate situation did not seem to affect her. That her own situation was very bad. She was in danger. That didn't seem to affect her. She was lost. For a moment, she was immersed in Krishna, as it were. So she prayed to him. And then she said that, look, this is what is happening to me. And these wicked Kauravas are trying to disrobe me. And Krishna said that, why are you worried about these petty things? Don't worry. Pray to God Surya. You had given clothes in an earlier incarnation you had given clothes to Surya in your earlier existence. You had given clothes to Surya when Surya needed them, and now pray to him, and he will return the loan that he had taken from you. So that kind of he said. So Krishna said something like this. Krishna said essentially this, that you had given Surya, and the time has come for Surya to repay you. So pray to Surya. He said this and left. Krishna did not robe her. Krishna did not give clothes to her in Sarala's version. He simply reminded her of a debt that the god Surya had to redeem. So he said that pray to Surya, which is what she did, which is what she did. But when Krishna returned to Dwaraka, he saw Surya on the sky, and he told Surya that the time has come for him to be of help to Draupadi. He should remember the debt that he owed to her, and the time had come for him to redeem that debt. So he said this and left. And it was Surya, his consorts, it was Surya who sent Chaya and Maya. Chaya translates into shadow, Maya translates into illusion. So Chaya and Maya came, and of course nobody could see them, and they were the ones who kept dressing Draupadi. So the clothes would come, layers of clothes would come. So, but then she was always dressed because it was Chaya and Maya who were dressing her. And this is a story, and it's a different story from the story that you have in Vyasa Mahabharata or in popular version. It is not Krishna who gave her anything. Krishna simply was a facilitator. He came and reminded her that Surya had taken something from her, and he reminded Surya that time had come for him to redeem the debt, the debt. So that is all that she did. That is all that Krishna did. He himself did not do anything. Now, what does it really mean? It's an interesting story, different from both, as I said, from the version that you have in Vyasa Mahabharata and from the popular version where Krishna himself gave the clothes. Nothing of that kind happened here in Sarala. What was Sarala doing? Sarala was trying to find a way of combining the karmic theory with the theory of grace. Karmic theory would mean that if you do good, the fruits are good. If you do bad, the fruits of bad action will always be bad. You cannot escape the fruits of karma. Whatever karma you do, whatever you sow, you will reap what you have sown. So, whatever karma you do, you will have to experience the results of the karma. There is absolutely no escape. If this cannot happen, that is, you are not affected by the phala of your karma in this life, you will have to experience the, if it cannot be done in this life, it will be done in the next or the next or the next. There is no escape from karma phala. It will chase you in births after births after births. So there is no escape. Now, probably during the time of the the idea of bhakti could not accept, felt uncomfortable with the idea of no escape from karma. So, intervention of God, intervention of Narayana became a way of intervention of Narayana was considered to be a way of getting out of the karmic cycle. So God's grace comes and God gives moksha. And when moksha happens, then you are no more in the cycle of birth and death. I mean, this is one understanding of the notion of moksha, one understanding. There could be other interpretations, but one interpretation is that you are no more in the cycle of life and death. And that happens because of grace, because karma itself cannot give you moksha. Now, if this is the case, then what happened here in Sala Mahabharata? If Draupadi did not have to undergo the humiliation of being disrobed, it is not because of grace alone. It is because of her own karma. She had done some good karma, and she experienced the fruit of that karma in another existence. In a former existence, she had done something good to Surya, God Surya, and in this existence, she enjoyed the fruit of that karma. So the effect of karma is not restricted to one birth, but it can extend to many births. Then what is grace? Grace here, that is Krsna here, grace here takes the form of being a facilitator. So Draupadi had forgotten, sort of in this birth, she did not have the memory of her previous births. So she had forgotten what she had done before. Krishna came and reminded her of that. Similarly, it never occurred to Surya that the time had come for him to redeem the debt. It was Krishna who reminded Surya that the time had come for him to do that. So Krishna's intervention in the process was kind of amounted to facilitate things. So that is what grace did. So karma phala you have to undergo. Good karma, good phala, bad karma, bad phala, you have to undergo that. What grace does, what God's grace does, is to facilitate it, give you another chance, as in case of Ajamila, as in case of Pingala, and facilitate things as in the case of Draupadi. But karma phala is something one can never escape. So it has never been, in our tradition, in our sacred texts, it has never been the case that you simply take no matter how many sins you commit, you take the name of God at the time of death and everything is wiped out. No. That is not the main idea. That became the popular idea. That became popular idea during the Bhakti movement. So today, so many people started. So the Ajamila story in popular version became the story in which he takes the name of Narayana and goes to Vaikuntha. That is not, as I have tried to point out, that is not the thing. So here, what we have tried to see is we have tried to see how the notion of grace interacts with the notion of the karmic cycle. So that is what we have seen, and in Sala Mahabharata, this is how it happens. Okay. So 2 points we have made. One is this, that karmic cycle, that one has to experience the fruit of one's karma, and there is no escape from this. That is number one. And number two, that grace can come in the form of some kind of an intervention, because of which you get another chance, or which becomes a facilitator, because of which you get another chance in some way or the other. So that is the notion of grace. So grace does not. So Krishna does not do anything. Krishna only facilitates. So this is the idea. Okay. Now we'll make a little digression here. and talk about the poet. We so far have been talking mainly about the text, but now let us see, now let us spend a few minutes talking about the poet. Now, we know very little about the poet Sarala Das. All that we know about him are from his own works. Let us move to something else. Let us talk a little about the poet. So far we have been talking about the text. Now let us digress a little here now and talk about the poet. There is actually not much that is known about Sarala Das. There have been all kinds of controversies about him, where he was born, to which century he belonged, but the standard view right now is that he was born in the 15th century, was a contemporary of King Kapilendra Dev, in whose army he served for a while. But before he served in his army, he was an agriculturist. He was a cultivator in his village. He was born in a village called Kanakapatti in Jhankad. Today we call it Jhankad. So, he was born in Kanakapatti in Jhankad. His name was not Sarala Das from the beginning. His name was Siddheswar Parida. Later, he called himself Sarala Das, and later he called himself Shudra Muni. He says that he was born, he says that by caste he was a Shudra. And how was he a Muni? One of the meanings of Muni is the following. One of the meanings of Muni is the poet or the author. So, when he called himself Shudra Muni, he probably wanted to say that he was born a Shudra by caste, but he was a Muni because he was a composer, he was a poet. It is also said that some of the servitors in Sarala temple in Jhankad, some of the servitors were called Munis, and probably his ancestors were servitors in the temple. We do not really know. All these are mired in controversy, and but this is all that is fairly accepted today. There was a tradition, there is a hallowed tradition in fact in India, that the poets did not talk about themselves. It is said that neither Kalidasa nor Bhavahuti even talked about themselves. We know very little about themselves, we know very little about these great poets from their poetic compositions. It is said that whatever we know about them are from other texts. But in the case of Sarala Das, there is no independent text from which we can extract some material of relevance to our finding out who he was, when he was born, when he died, etc., etc. So, and he was called Adikavi only 100 years ago. Adikavi was not a title given to him by a king. It was virtually given to him by, sort of. It was not a royal title. It was a people's title. It was a scholar's title that was given to him. In any case, so what does Sarala say about himself? He says that he is a murkha. He says that he is an ignoramus. He spent his time in the village with other murkhas, with other sort of uneducated persons, and he did not learn any shastras, he did not learn anything, and if he could, and he did not learn anything, and he whiled away his time and wasted his time in the village. So how did he come to compose the Mahabharata? This we have already we have had probably an occasion to refer to. He said that he had done it by the blessings of goddess Sarala. So goddess Sarala was the presiding deity of the village, and he says that goddess Sarala goddess Sarala helped him to write the Mahabharata. She virtually told him what to write, and he only wrote. So that is what he says about himself. Like a Jati Smara, that is those who remember their past existences. Like a Jati Smara, he says that he was a gatekeeper in Kailash, which is the abode of Shiva. Sorry, he was a gatekeeper in Kapilash in Odisha, which is the abode of Bhagavan Shiva. There one day, we don't have to go into these details, but there one day, Bhagavan Ganesh cursed him, and cursed him to be born in the mortal world. And he knew that to get mukti and get back to his own status, his own position in Kapilas as Shiva's gatekeeper, he had to write 60 lakh slokas, 60 lakh padas celebrating the glory of Vishnu. So he would have to write Vishnu Leela to Vishnu Leela to return to his status, to return to his position in Kailas, in Kapilas. He said that this was his third birth. In the first, he was born as Kalidasa. In the second, he was born as Mahakali, and in the third, he is born as Sarala Das. And he would be reborn. He would have rebirth again, so that he completes 60 lakh slokas, 60 lakh padas, after which he would be able to return to Kapilas and be a servitor of Bhagavan Shiva. Now, and he also says that if he wrote, he says that he is explicating on the Leela of Vishnu for the common people, because the common people had no access to the Puranas, which were in Sanskrit language. He wrote his Mahabharata so that ordinary people would understand the Mahabharata or would have access to it. And he called his Mahabharata Vishnu Purana, obviously, because he was saying that his main aim was to explicate on the Leela of Vishnu, and 60,000 padas he had to write for that. Now, what we can say is, it is said that he said all this partly because it was a riti, it was a convention not to take credit for one's own works. That was a convention, and dedicate and say that it is the divine which is responsible for a great work of art. So he was following that hallowed tradition, and it is also some have also argued that he did that to protect himself from the attack of the Brahmins and the elite. During that time, during those days, the elite, people were not allowed to write Puranas in the local languages. In the case of Sarala, Odia. So the language of intellectual discussion and the language of dissemination of Puranic knowledge or discussion was Sanskrit. So when Sarala wrote his Mahabharata in Odia, he was actually doing a revolutionary job. He was doing something which was very revolutionary. So he knew that he might be persecuted by the elite in Odisha during those days for writing about, for narrating the Leela of Krsna, and for writing an epic for writing a Purana in Odia language. So he might be persecuted, that was his fear. So to protect himself, he said that he was not the one who was doing all this. It was all being done by goddess Sarala herself, and he was only an instrument. She was the poet, she was the person who really told, she was the goddess who really told him what to write, and he was only writing what she had asked him to write. So at night she would tell him, in the morning he would write. So that is the kind of thing that he sort of said. Now, talking about the controversy, returning to the issue of controversy, Gopinath Mahanti, a well-known writer and a Jnanapith Award winner, and an extremely important writer of modern Odia fiction, he argued that Sarala Das belonged to the 9th or the 10th century, and he was born in Puri district. But that view, he gave his own arguments, and he published his work in a research journal in Odisha, but his arguments have been countered. And the standard view, as I said, is that he was born in the 15th century. I mentioned Mr. Gopinath Mahanti's research simply to draw your attention to the fact that there has been controversy about Sarala, and even with respect to when he was born and where he was born. Everybody had the same text. So Gopinath Mahanti interpreted the text in one way, and those who contested him interpreted the text, same information from the text in another way. There was no independent evidence for anybody to go by. So that is something that that we should keep in mind, that very little is known for certain. Now I would conclude by saying one thing, that you see, if there was a tradition in India, we know that there was a tradition in India where the poets and the writers did not take credit for their own work. Now, to my mind, if they did not talk about themselves, to my mind, what it means to me is the following, that the work is important, not the creator of the work. The poet is not important, the poem is important, the text is important. So to my mind, the tradition means simply this, and this is what that is why Sarala, that's the kind of tradition that Sarala followed. And there is even controversy with respect to how many books, how many texts were composed by Sarala. Sarala himself says that he composed Bilanka Ramayana. He composed Bilanka Ramayana first, then he composed the Mahabharata, and then he composed what he called Bhagavata. By that he meant Devi Bhagavata, Chandi Puran. But there is a view that he really did not write all that, he simply wrote the Mahabharata. So all this is controversial, but the accepted view is that he wrote Bilanka Ramayana, then he wrote Mahabharata, and then he wrote Devi Bhagavata, which is Chandi Puran. So that is what we know about him. So I thought, although in these 10 talks, we will be talking about text and not so much about, not much about the writer or the poet, I thought it is important for us to know, because this is something which has, which is talked about in Odia literary criticism. What is the people have been curious to know about the poet, and that is why I thought, although my own interest is not in the poet but in the work, my interest is not mainly, is mainly on the work and not so much on the poet. I all the same thought I should make a mention of this because of usual curiosity, who was the person who wrote this, and that is why there is this scholarship in Odia. Odia literary scholarship also includes this biographical information about Sarala Das. So thank you very much.